this feeling pick me up when I get low. I'm in the deep and I got nowhere else to go. Crash to the ceiling till I'm losing all control. Losing all control. I'm on the edge because of you. So tonight I'll be the highest in the room. Out my mind, my heart is when my head is bruised. Kill the lights, there's nothing else that I can do. I'm standing on the edge because of you. I'm on the edge because of you. So tonight I'll be the highest in the room. Out my mind, my heart is when my head is bruised. Kill the lights, there's nothing else that I can do. I'm standing on the edge because of you. I know this feeling pick me up when I get low. I'm in it deep and I got nowhere else to go. Crash to the ceiling till I'm losing all control. Losing all control. Don't kill the lights, my baby. Don't want the hype to fade away. Just kill the lights, my baby. Oh, it's true. I'm on the edge because of you. So tonight I'll be the highest in the room. Out my mind, my heart is on my head is bruised. Kill the lights, there's nothing else that I can do. I'm standing on the edge because of you. I'm on the edge because of you. So tonight I'll be the highest in the room. Out my mind, my heart is on my head is bruised. Kill the lights, there's nothing else that I can do. I'm standing on the edge because of you.
You take me higher. You take me higher. You take me higher. You take me higher.
You know, I've been so much better lately.
Have you?
Lately, and then today happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Luckily, our guest is flexible enough to forgive me for being an idiot, so it's fine. You know.
Oh, you're good.
I didn't get off of work until late. I blame my job.
I blame Shadu too. I mean,
yeah.
Whoa.
I mean, I blame Shadu's dad, given that he's the son of Dionysus. So Dionysus in his revelry, making everyone late. Ladies and gentlemen, going.
distance nerding.
Woo! Hey, I'm screaming and my door is open, so I'm yelling at my wife.
Yay!
Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It is Thursday. It is time for another installment of your favorite interview / what is Phil building today show. It is The Build. Woo!
Yes.
And do we have a whole bunch of fun for you? Welcoming back their beautiful faces. He is the beard that puts the beards, all the other beards, to shame. He is the beard of the beards. It is the beard. Graveyard. How's it going, Graveyard?
Oh, good. Yeah, I have early work start day tomorrow, but that's not important. We are here to build out with Phil and nerd out with our guest. But join us on a rare specialty Thursday episode is the one and only Shadu.
I'm on here somewhat regularly. I mean, you know.
Shadu's on more often than some of the other hosts that are typically on Thursday. So,
I mean, that's true. I mean, the hat's been on more shows than he has.
You're not wrong. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, before we bring on our guest here today, let's talk housekeeping, right? Keeping the lights on. Ladies and gentlemen, this show, this channel, everything we do here is brought to you by Poddex. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Poddex are a unique interview question and episode starting prompts in the palm of your hand. So whether you are a new podcaster or an existing broadcaster looking to grow your audience or get more engagement, level up with Poddex. Guys, download the Poddex app. Use the code NERDING10, get 10% off your order. And if you are in to Close-Up Magic, then does Graveyard have some fun for you? What is our Close-Up Magic of the day? Question of the day. I screwed that up.
Complete this quote. I ate his liver with some. Oh wait, sorry, wrong show.
That is amazing.
If you were a bartender, which famous person would you like to serve?
Graveyard. I already know who your answer is, but just for all the fans,
you already know my answer. Who I want to serve?
Yeah,
clearly Jonathan Majors.
There's only one person. There's only one person in the world.
Good.
That Graveyard wants to serve for the rest of eternity.
I would say yes, except I'd rather be drinking with the person, not serving them.
Oh, well, but if you were a bartender, who would you want to serve?
Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Because I think I'd have more fun conversing with him than drinking next to him.
There you go. Liam, what is your...
Do they have to be a real person?
No.
Okay, so we'll watch the Watcher then.
Ooh, that'd be a fun conversation to watch.
Yeah.
Can he get drunk? Should he get drunk?
No on both accounts, but
and mine, I mean, somebody who I've already met, and that was an amazing person, just to kind of like dig through his mind a little more. Kevin Smith.
Ooh.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, just again, I would be giving him blue milk all day because that man loosens up when you give him a blue milk. So there you go.
Nice.
And he's already pretty loose as it is. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. We use Poddex in pretty much every interview that we do. So if you want to get a good icebreaker or anything like that, guys, head over to poddex.com. Use the code NERDING10. Get 10% off your order. Now, if the channel is brought to you by Poddex, then you may be wondering what brings you Young Phil and all the energy that Young Phil has. This thing right here, and you can see it right next to Graveyard's head. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Dubby. I was not prepared. It's Dubby! Ladies and gentlemen, Dubby is a brand of energy drinks created to help focus, concentration, reaction time with no jitters or crash. Dubby contains no maltodextrin, no sugar, no filler, no artificial colors or dyes. Now, you may be wondering to yourself, and I know Graveyard does every single time we talk about this.
Every damn night.
Yeah, what makes this different from other supplements out there. Ladies and gentlemen, W contains Neurofactor. Neurofactor is a neurotropic derived from the coffee fruit. It helps give your brain focus and clarity, while the 150 milligrams of caffeine and 3 essential B vitamins give you focus and clarity. I said that already. So just keep you alert and energized. So, ladies and gentlemen, find out more about W at www.w.gg. Use the code nerding10. Get 10% off your order. There are like 75 different flavors now. I'm exaggerating, but it's delicious. And I did not grab water in time because I was in such a rush to get this all set up. So I am not going to be drinking W tonight. But
and make sure to go to w.gg, and if they have a customize your flavor option, we want petitions for pickle flavored W.
That's like doubly bad, because it's like, one, I have to drink every flavor of W that comes out, just given that they're a sponsor. But two, that's one of those, Phil has to drink it because it exists. And we all know he hates pickles. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get in on this.
Yes.
Let's introduce our guest. So our guest today is a creator, is somebody who I had the pleasure of sitting in on a panel that one of his I wanted to use the an extremely wrong word. I was going to say cohort, and it's like, no, you're not he's not a cohort, like a collaborator, and
accomplice.
Accomplice. Well, no, that works too. We'll go with accomplice because they're not robbing people. It's fine. But it's I was able to sit in on this panel, and I was so captivated by the story and kind of like the mythology that this this series of books and this comic book company produces. And I knew the moment listening to them that I had to have them on the show, and we had to talk about their comics and promote their work. So without any further delay, because I am delaying, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show Mark Nassal from Diwata Comics.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey there.
Love your sound effects.
I know, right? Makes it makes it
It's the
1,000
best
times more fun, right?
I know. Now I want to try Dubby.
Dude,
Like,
Dubby
you did a good job with that. Like, now I want to go grab one.
Dubby is delicious right there, man. Like I said, go to
pretty good.
w.gg, use the code nerding10, you get 10% off.
Well, thanks for having me on the show, guys. How are you guys doing today?
No, man, we're happy to have you. Again, I sat in, I got to see Joe talk about Diwata Comics. And again, it was something that was, I was interested in it because I love storytelling, right? And to hear these stories about taking like Filipino mythology and Filipino kind of stories, and I mean, the other thing just being seeing Filipino creators start to create more things out there that have mainstream appeal. I just found it awesome. We happen to be in there because we're friends with the guys from Lumpia. So, I was like, well, let's go support Lumpia. And then I saw everything else, and I was like, these guys are badass. So,
well, I'm glad you guys like it. I mean, I think if anything, it was fun. It wasn't just fun. It was fun, fulfilling, and everything in between, kind of building the world, setting up the company, telling the stories, expanding the brand, and so much more. So I suppose, what do you want to know? Like, what kind of strikes your fancy? Where do you want me to start?
well, let's start with this. So we tend to ask some getting to know you questions first.
Okay.
Jump into kind of like your career and everything that you guys do over at Diwata. So if a movie was made about your life, who would play you and why?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I mean, this kind of like tells you one of those, like, there hasn't really been a lot of representation when it comes to people that look like me. So I actually do not know the answer to that. The closest person I've ever come across that was even mainstream is not even in American television. It was in Australian TV. So I do not know the answer to that. It would have to be fresh casting.
Gotcha.
Sorry. Like, I wish I was a little bit more fun, but at the same time, like, I don't know if the kid from Modern Family can play me. Not in the right. You know what I mean? So I really do not know the answer to that.
No worries, man. Like, again, it's great. It would be great to get more, Pinoy representation on both TV and film and everything like that. Just get somebody from the Filipino News Network. We'll be fine there too.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It's like, well, for one, I don't know if I do like an international casting because then they'd have an accent as if they grew up over there. So it definitely would have to be somebody that kind of grew up here too. So
yeah.
People can do accents.
Yeah.
Would you say it'd be more of a comedy or a dramedy?
You know what? Like,
or just like a straight dark drama.
I actually would like it to be a little quirky, and then sure, you've got your dramatic moments, but if anything, I don't want it to be like a sob story. So let me just kind of like go back into why we started the comics in the first place.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Phil, you are part Filipino?
I am not. Our one of our co-hosts is Filipino, James.
Okay.
James Navarro. He's Filipino, but I am I'm full-blooded Nicaraguan.
Okay, great.
But funny enough, my mom was adopted and my grandfather was Filipino. So
Wow. Well, see, there you go. Regardless of which, I think what I was trying to get to is that especially when something is new in mainstream, a lot of the things that kind of like appeal to people tend to be more on the dramatic side, and it takes itself way too seriously.
Right.
And so like in kind of doing this brand, it allows you to kind of like have fun with the stories, not have everything be so like cut and dry, and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Nice.
Good.
So what's the next question? Like, where do we go from here? I feel like, I don't know. Like, I felt like there was some pressure there to kind of like come up with a very particular fun.
There's so much pressure.
No, and the whole
so much pressure.
Yeah.
You've got to. Okay, we're gonna give you 5 seconds for the next. No, I'm kidding.
No, but I mean, we do have a segment on the show called Growing Up Geeky. So, what did you geek out on as a kid? Obviously, I see your Megazord right there.
Very clearly, Megazord. I mean, what did I not? I mean, you guys just disturbed me from my session of Final Fantasy 16. So,
Nice.
I mean, I'm a child of the PlayStation era. I'm pretty sure by the end of the PlayStation era, I grew up in a place in a different country where we could get a lot more CDs than you could here. So we ended up with about 120 titles by the end of the first PlayStation and totally melted the CD section because of how much we played it. Obviously, the Power Rangers, the X-Men, Spider-Man. You know what I wasn't actually very good at? I remember my very first job because my very first industry job, to clarify, my boss was like, yeah, we've got this show and we want to make it look like Princess Leia hologram. And I was like, what is that? And he was like, you have to go home. You have to go and study without knowing that. And so, yeah, like, I think because I grew up in a different place, in a different country, the way that I kind of became a fan of stuff isn't the same way that people do here. Because here you have the ability to kind of become a fan of something, follow it over its lifespan. Whereas over there, you might have X-Men 1, and then you may never see number 2, 3, 4, and maybe you get it at 10, like 3 months or 2 years later.
Right.
Because English programming and English material wasn't the easiest to come across. It really wasn't until I got here that I got to follow some of the stuff. So, yeah.
Nice.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. I think that, obviously, a child of, I'm assuming the 90s.
The 90s.
Maybe. Okay.
Yeah. 90s, mostly 90s.
I mean, yeah, because you have the OG Megazord, right? That started in 94 and was there to like 95. So,
by the way, my age is pretty deceiving. How old are you guys?
Here's the fun part.
Hi, I'm 21. I'm the youngest person here.
Okay.
One yet.
I'm not yet. I'm getting used to. I'm 20 technically, but give it like a month.
The rest of us are in our late 30s. So
yeah,
our early 30s.
Late.
Okay, late. Well, I'm actually in that category, so there you go.
Oh,
I may have like 6 more months in my 30s, so yeah.
Fair. I mean, I was in Hawaii and somebody goes like, "What high school do you go to?" I'm like, "Lady, I'm not in high school." Like, "What high school do you go to?" I'm like, "Lady, I'm not in high school."
No, I had someone when I was 14 think I was like 30 something, so I know. I
Yeah, no,
had the
know.
opposite
Fortunate.
experience.
I was born with a beard, so
He just came out. There's just this long beard.
You know what? I tried. I was like, you know what? What if I kind of like do the whole like face thing? Would people think I was a little bit older? No, I'd still like the same thing. So I'm like, you know what? I stopped. It's itchy. Don't want it.
That's fair.
And I mean, we all know, like, the both blessing and plague of being Pinoy is you don't look like you're.
Oh yeah.
You look like you're a teenager until you hit like 60.
and then you become a raisin.
and then you like age rapidly.
That's terrifying. You know what? Like, my dad still, I would say, other than getting bald, my dad still looked exactly like how he used to in his late 30s. And he's like now in his 50s, 60s.
Yeah. I've got titos that still look like they're like, like 14. But
Yeah.
then, like, like their older brother that's like 2 years older than them, like all of a sudden looks like the old Chinese man. So it's
My cabbages. Oh,
my cabbages.
I get that. I hit my peak look at like 20, so I've not changed in that time frame.
Fair. I mean, like, I feel like I hit the look on even mentally. I was just talking to a friend. I'm like, I don't even feel like we're in our late 30s.
James in the chat. So I was talking about our other co-host, James, said, "Yeah, we're all in our late 30s."
Sorry, James.
James does look like he could still be in his 30s. He's deceptively in his 40s. So
yeah, but having
James
20
looks
kids,
great.
you can't have all 20 kids at once. You have to at least have 20 years in there.
That's
Right, you gotta put some space between.
Too much.
James has an entire like basketball team worth of kids. So
How many are we talking here? An entire team worth?
yeah. No, I mean he's got like an entire Olympic team's worth of kids.
Yeah, no. Like, I'm starting to. Like, some of my sideburns are turning white, but you don't see it here.
I would say all my hair on my head's gray, but I can't confirm that.
Fun fact: he has no hair. All right. So let's get into just kind of your work here, right?
Sure.
So tell us about Diwata Comics. So like for almost like the sales pitch, right? Like for anybody who
Sure.
in right here, the thing that you probably say on every show, but we're gonna jump into more on that. Just to, again, just kind of give everybody the crash course on Diwata itself.
Okay, so let me just, you know what? I'll begin this with, so Diwata Comics is a diversity-focused comic book company looking to tell stories both from a Filipino-American perspective and beyond. The reason I say beyond, because like I'm a third culture kid. I grew up in 3 different countries prior to coming here. And so when I kind of present myself to the world or anybody else really, the people that I gravitate to aren't people that are just necessarily from one culture or one place. Like, I kind of gravitate more to just people and stories in general. Like, I grew up in the Middle East. I spent some time in Australia. There's a certain time when all of a sudden I just go like this. But, but in so many ways, like, there's just so many facets of me as a person. And those are the kind of people that I want to tell stories with and of. Mm-hmm. And so we like to tell stories for, and, in the perspective of and for third culture kids, immigrants, and everybody in between, just looking to really find a place to belong. And that's kind of our mantra. We want to tell stories for everybody just looking to feel like they belong, because the world's such a big place. But you're not wrong. Our stories did begin with Carmina, who is based on Philippine mythology. It's basically a young woman from a small town in New Mexico who finds out that she's a demigod, but not just any demigod. Her mother is a powerful goddess from ancient Philippine mythology. So there's kind of this, American gods feel where she's kind of like in this trailer park town in New Mexico, kind of facing adversity. And all of a sudden she finds out she's the daughter of a Philippine goddess and she knows nothing about it, right? So you really have this character that's very fish out of water, but at the same time, that's how she gets out of the precarious situation she finds herself in. And then, as we grew, we started introducing a lot of like different characters and even kind of like started expanding on what she could be. And I think we just realized that as we as we met a lot of the different people in the community, we realized how even as a culture, as a group, there's not one story, but there's a myriad of stories. So apart from just Carmina, we started licensing fantastic books from the Philippines as well, so that people can understand where these stories came from. Some are about, some are established mythologies, while others, like this one in particular, is a little bit more obscure, kind of like an unknown mythology. And then what we have coming up for 2024, our big project for 2024, is an anthology featuring 8 different creators of people who we met across time. We just got to know from the different conventions and the different events, and somehow we invited them to tell their own stories. And now you have 7, because I'm the 8th, 7 new creators telling different stories from different points of view. And by the way, these are not people who were in the entertainment industry just as writers or whatever. They're literally people who've had interesting stories from the community. So you have here, if you guys look on diwatacomics.com, you'll literally see the icons, and in those words or in the characters, we have we have Chaplin, who is kind of like speaking to an older generation of Philams. You have Monk, who's kind of like more of a martial artist, but he's also a mentor to kids, because that's kind of like what Jesse, the creator, does. You've got myself, who comes from an LGBTQ perspective, who's also like an immigrant who kind of like grew up in a different place. You've got Divina, who was created by Lynn, who is a Filipina shaman and herbalist, and is kind of like writing it from that perspective. You have Carmina, whose story is now being driven completely by Erica, my co-creator with Carmina. But for this particular anthology, she's driving the story. So you get to see a different side of Carmina that's a little quirkier, because Erica can be a bit quirky. You've got Alma, who's kind of like an LGBTQ female living in San Francisco, but her other side is she's kind of like a Mystique-like character, but an aswang from Philippine mythology, who's also a shapeshifter, but also a personality shapeshifter.
That's cool.
You've got Kawal Dog, who's a veteran and also a fighter. You've got Nikki J, who's, how can I explain Nikki J? He's kind of like the Angelus. If I were to pick a character in existing comics that he would be similar in mythology to, but with a very different personality, it would be like as if he was the host of the Angelus, if you guys remember the Angelus from The Darkness and from Witchblade. But he's a nurse by day, photographer by night, but he happens to have been blessed with divine manifestation. So, I love the fact that all of these stories are not just driven by one creator, but we've literally invited different people whose life experiences kind of reflect the character to show that, here's a group that here's an ethnic group that you may not have been as aware of, but also you don't have one story from this group. You have 8 stories to start, and our hope is to be able to tell more as the group expands.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And like I said, like this is what captivated me about the entire project and about the entire company was telling these diverse stories, and almost like you guys already have the one up of like how Marvel Comics and how like a lot of like the other big companies have, where you have multiple storytellers telling stories.
Correct. I would kind of like argue that I guess storytelling has been something I've always done. And fun fact, actually, you asked about different media. One of the focuses of this year actually is the Carmina live action, because live action is my background. My work has been, let's see, if you just Google me on IMDb, find me on IMDb. My work has been Gotham, Lucifer, Agents of Shield, Swamp Thing, blah 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 blah. I don't want to keep on going into enumeration. Just find my IMDb and you'll basically see the list, and you'll see that I worked on all of these projects. And I think Diwata Comics was born from not just Diwata Comics and Surreal Arts was born from me wanting to take all of the experience I've had in making and bringing to life those fantastic franchises for different things, but with stories that I can relate to, that I grew up with, and with the people that I want to help support as well, like outside of the major brands.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember Joe bringing that up, like just talking about almost like your background and kind of talking about like how the company started and everything on there. And that's kind of again that's what fascinated me with you guys is kind of like almost your story, your origins, where you guys come from, the different perspectives you guys have, and just kind of like the drive on what you're doing. So I have like a massive amount of respect for what you guys are doing.
I think honestly, like one of the things I'm looking forward to, we're actively working on the anthology right now, and right as of this moment, I've already approved 3 of the 8 scripts, and between those 3 scripts alone, the tone is so different from each other. Like Carmina kind of plays a little bit more of like a female, but she's got some martial arts chops, she has some powers, but she's kind of like not the strongest character, but she's kind of quirky, she's kind of funny. And then you get Anton, whose entire storyline is much younger skewing. He's 17, who just finds out he has these abilities he has no idea controlling, but his personality is also very he's not funny, but he's kind of like self-deprecating. So everything is kind of like a mishap, and the tone of it is a lot more colorful and it's a lot funnier versus Carmina, that tends to be a lot more serious. And then the third one is very spiritual, metaphysical, larger than life. Has this one of Lynn's influences was Fathom, so you kind of have like a world mythology aspect. So that's just the first 3 that's been approved. The other ones are still kind of like finding their tone and voice, and that's kind of exciting. The fact that you get this anthology, and for the first time ever, you have stories coming from this unrepresented group, not unrepresented completely, but not as well represented group, and already you have a flavor of 8 different stories with different characters. And by the way, the mythologies here, I would argue, are not Philippine mythology, they're new mythologies, because while some of them may have Philippine mythology roots, it really is new mythology because we're creating new stories, even while borrowing some aspects of the mythology.
Yeah.
It's essentially the idea of comic books. You're creating new mythology.
Right. It's like you take something from something that does exist, but you twist it into something your own, and that's kind of exciting. Like they may have origins in it, but it certainly is not the end of it.
Yeah, because I was going through the website earlier this evening, and Phil knows what's immediately going to catch my eye on some of these comics.
Oh yeah.
I love horror to no end, and I'm really intrigued with carnals and tales and stuff like that. That you are going to that the superstitions, the supernatural, the horror side of it, and I really enjoy learning different cultures, belief systems that exist and stuff like that.
Well, see, one of my favorite pitches actually, and it's funny because we did not plan to create a comic book company. Like, again, I come from a film background.
Right.
We did films. And the way that the comic book company actually began was during COVID. We paused the film because, well, we couldn't really meet in person. There were a lot of things that were paused. The entire industry was paused. And we wanted to tell more stories with the character that we started with. And one of the things we said was, oh, you know what? We're going to do a 5-page companion comic to tell a backstory. And the next thing you know, we looked for we found an article on Esquire Philippines about this artist. And I'm like, oh my God, I really love his style. Let's see if he responds. He responds. We get along fantastically. Next thing you know, we were working on the 5-page comic. But then we're like, oh, I really like this. Let's turn this into an entire comic.
Yeah.
Then we go like, well, all right, we have 1 comic. Let's do comic number 2. Let's acquire some other titles. And yeah, like it just kept on growing and growing and growing. New Icons actually was supposed to be something that was just a feature for Philippine American History Month, where we wanted to feature like 1 or 2 characters of something that people created. And then we realized how powerful it was. And next thing you know, we had cards, and now the anthology, and that's pretty exciting to me because I don't know. I like the idea that people can grab this and sort of like again have a flavor, different flavors where they can see that it's such a rich group.
Mhm.
And by the way, this group is inclusive in a way that their friends and the people around them are, well, from all over the place. Like in Anton's story, Anton is a reflection of myself and a reflection of my friends, and my friends are not all the same race, right? It's exactly like this group. You may have James, who is Filipino, but if James was in New Icons, well, you guys would be the supporting characters. Like, that's kind of like the purpose of it, is to kind of really show and reflect the world that we exist in today.
Mhm.
Not necessarily just be like, oh yeah, you've got a Filipino story and everybody's Filipino. That's not feasible either. That's not matter of fact.
Right.
Like, unless you were over there, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Therefore, it is just, you know what, the way that I kind of like put it to is very similar to American Born Chinese, right? The
Mhm.
title itself says American Born Chinese, and with that comes the complexities of what it means to be an American Born Chinese, where you may have some weird food that maybe not everybody kind of like gets, and you'll kind of like see that in some of these characters where they may have, you know, they may have oddities that people may not understand. They may like things that their other friends may not understand. But at the end of the day, it's all about making sure that they feel like they belong in this place we call home. And they're just, they're your neighbor, they're your friends. But what I was going to get to, by the way, and sorry, I forget, what is the name of the person with the W sign? Graveyard.
Graveyard, yes.
Graveyard. One of the best pitches that somebody did when they worked on our booth was, all she said was, "Do you like mythology?" And by then, people were just like, "Yeah, I like mythology." And it's like, "Okay, check these out." And I thought that was the best pitch ever, because who doesn't like mythology? We grew
Right.
up with Norse, we grew up with Greek, and then very slowly we're now starting to see other forms of mythology. But you can argue that this mythology, while there's been some visibility, it hasn't really reached that milestone. By the way, it's super loving the new Percy Jackson, I have to say.
Oh, yeah.
But going into Philippine mythology, what's interesting about Philippine mythology to some degree is that it may be mythology for some people, but some people believe it like it's matter of fact.
Right.
Like, I remember I was working at this place when I first started. I was working at I don't want to say where, but I was working at a place, and this lady was like, "Hey, Mark, don't talk to that girl." I was like, "Why?" "Oh, she comes from my hometown." I was like, "All right, what about it?" "Her family is known to be a thing." Basically, she was saying her family is known to be this creature right here. And I
Oh.
was like, "Okay, tell me more." So the fact that that person could theoretically have moved over here, what's not saying that that girl really isn't this coming doesn't really come from this family of creatures. So now you take a story that used to belong just over there, but because of international travel, I don't know, she's in downtown LA. What if she becomes bloodthirsty in downtown LA? She's not going to go back to the Philippines to get her, you know, to get her prey. It's going to
Right.
happen here. I mean, you could argue that Dracula is the same thing. Dracula
Mhm.
is not American.
Right.
No.
No.
Yeah.
No, and like I said, I love to see that, because you watch some TV shows like Destination Truth, and he goes to other countries, and he kind of just, nothing against Josh Gage, but kind of just dismisses some of the legends and folklores and places he goes. But you think about, like, you view like the American belief system and stuff like that we believe in, our personal demons and hauntings are very different from other cultures too. And that's what I said. I love to see other aspects of different belief systems and what they really believe to be true. I find that amazing. I love to learn more about stuff like that.
So, out of curiosity, what do you guys know about the monsters in Philippine mythology?
Nothing.
I don't
All
know.
right, Graveyard. Well, you're getting this to start. Send me your address. The fun part, or not the fun part. So let me tell you about this creature right here. It's a mouthful, but it literally, let me say it. It's called a manananggal, a manananggal. But it's what it is literally a woman by day. She's typically pretty. She's typically a do-gooder, like a teacher, a nun, or
Mhm.
whatever. But by night, because she has a curse on her. Her upper and lower body split from each other. She grows bat wings, flies around, and looks for pregnant women so she could basically eat the babies. And she has a long, elongated tongue.
I mean,
That's
that would be
cool.
that'd be a dope movie. I think it'd be a dope thing to see in like the VHS series, like they did Siren and stuff like that. That'd be an amazing story to see there.
And how you kill her is you find the lower body, which usually stores in a safe place. You put salt, vinegar, and garlic.
I was gonna say baking soda, but you know.
Yeah. You see, there are similarities, or or prevent her from coming back to her body when the sun shines. But yeah,
so there's kind of a similarity with
stuff.
Sorry. So there's kind of a similarity with like earlier vampire legends almost.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's. I think in so many ways it is basically a vampire type myth, because you could even see that if you go look at Cambodian mythology, you actually have a creature very similar. It was actually told on one of the storyteller Jim Henson storyteller comic books, where they showed that creature, and instead of the upper and lower body splitting in half, it was just the head that kind of like starts floating. But I think in some stories they kind of like put like translucent spider legs on the head, so it's as if it was a parasitic host that just kind of like attached itself to a human body, which freaky. But yeah, I mean those are variations. But in some variations, the head itself just floats, like for no reason, like, no wings, it just floats with the vertebrae attached.
That's awesome. No, it's like knowing about all of these more kind of Western and European mythologies or whatever. Like I'm kind of a classicist, so I'm really into like Roman and Greek and all of that. But I love learning about the mythology of these other cultures that are so radically different, yet there's still these similarities.
I mean, you could even argue that the mother or the class of goddess that is Carmina has been shown in the Marvel Universe. Diwatas exist in the Marvel Universe. And I think in the Marvel Universe, they are classed very similar to Asgardians. So that's pretty interesting. So they are aware of them. But in so many ways, it's, again, you just realize how big the world is, because, I don't know, like for me, when you think about how big or how vast the country is, it has 7,000 something islands. So because of that, a lot of myths actually translate differently in different places. And so people might think, as always, whenever there's something new, people might think, oh, it's one thing. And then I'm like, no, it's not one thing. It's like a shit ton.
It's something where it's like, religion and mythology, they're internally diverse.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really the big thing. I mean, even you look at a really familiar mythology, again, as I said, Greek or Norse or whatever, you look deep enough, there's these weird little things that it's like, oh, this was this specific town somewhere that believes this and all of that. So it's, it's fascinating to explore a different mythological system, especially in this way.
Right.
A fun fact on Grimm, I guess you could say that, God, what was his character's name? Was he a General Wu? Was he a general? No, he was I know he was a cop. But Reggie is a friend, so yeah.
Like I said, it's interesting because as Shadu was saying that we have the Western European idea of vampires, but there's also Eastern European, there's Russian, there is vampires in Chinese mythology and Japanese mythology and stuff like that too. And I always found
Polynesian mythology.
Yeah,
interesting recommendation, by the way. Look for an old movie called A Chinese Horror Story. Yeah, you know what? Just watch it. I don't even want to kind of like spoil it. There's so many fun elements in there, and it's really enjoyable to watch. And it's interesting that I remember that. And the last time I've seen that, I was like really young. I was still in elementary school when I saw that. But I remember how fun that movie was, because you have the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon aspect, but then you have what their version of a horror story and monsters was. It was a pretty cool one to watch.
Yeah, like I said, I love that you are bringing the mythologies here, and like I said, you even said it here in like LA, bloodthirstiness of a rampage going on there. because I think it would fit in. I think it's a good introduction to people like me that love horror that don't know as much as the Asian area of horror. I don't know very well, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think in so many ways too, even as a consumer myself, right? One of the things I always want to look for is what is new, like
Right.
what is something that I haven't seen yet. And it always bugs me whenever I go to like a comic book store or a movie that they've rehashed 20 times. What's the point of rehashing this 20 million times when you literally have like an entire world of other material? And so I'm not sure about you guys, but whenever I go to the comic book store, yeah, I'll kind of like browse my Marvel, my DC, but then I'll go to the back and I'm like, what is new? What's different? What haven't I seen? Like, I know for me, like during COVID, that was what I did. That was my way to get out of the house, was to literally just go to the comic book store and kind of just see what was new, what was different, what can kind of like take me out of my current boredom. And I'm not gonna lie. Like there was a period when I didn't really care for some of the more popular material, but I was always looking for what was new and what was different.
Yeah, like I said, your comics are going to be right in there too. I mean, was this kind of the comic book making kind of bred from COVID? I know a lot of people started.
You know what? Yes,
like
this
that.
was this. The comic books are our COVID bread. And which kind of just grew a life of its own. Like, I think because we had so much more time to do X, Y, and Z, it kind of became very natural for us. I mean, our COVID projects were we made the comic books, we ended up with a pandemic short film that was ridiculously stupid funny. Just because we were like, we're not going to do something serious, then everything is already way too serious.
Right.
So, yeah, like I feel like I'm very lucky that I found a group that just says yes whenever I have a crazy idea. And today, like I could be like, hey, Erica, do you want to go shoot the Carmina story that we just wrote? She'd be like, yeah, when do you want to go? Like we just do
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's.
Now, with your background, do you see these becoming live action in the long run?
Yes, actually. In fact, if again, like I said, if you guys pick up issue number 2, well, this is the original cover for issue number 2, by the way, but the variant is the only one we have right now until otherwise mentioned. We will probably do another reprint of issue number 2, standard edition. Issue number 2 is a direct mirror to the live action. Like there is probably 1% that does not match the live action version, just because in the comic it was meant to continue the narrative, whereas in the short it was meant to end just so that there was a closure for the film. But the visuals are almost 1-to-1. In fact, when we were doing the post-production of the film, we paused the look development of the actual film because we wanted the film to reflect the comic.
Ooh.
How about this? I'm going to show you guys something that probably has not really been made public, just for your fans. I'm actually
Ooh.
We are all for reveals. We love.
Sure. It's not a big reveal. I showed it at LA Comic Con, but I'll show it in the premiere.
Yeah. Please.
But while that's loading, feel free to ask me something else.
So, I mean, with your background, do you find it helping make the panels easier with your film background?
Oh yeah, no, I'm kind of so obviously you see that I'm the chief creative. Unlike other folks that do not have a creative background, I am very hands-on. Like I pretty much know every single thing that happens, where it happens, how it happens. Like there's a level of control that I do not get to let go. In fact, obviously I'm friends with a lot of people in the industry, and I gave a copy to one of the producers at the studio where I worked. And one of the things he said was, "This is very detailed. How did you manage it? How did you manage it?" And I was like, you know how I manage. He goes like, oh my God, did you torture the people who were working for you by making it like it was a production? I'm like, yes. I literally treated it like it was a film or TV project. In
Nice.
terms of the details, in terms of the approval process, in terms of how everything was kind of established, in terms of the look. I basically treated it as if it was made for television because that's been my experience. But let me kind of like show you guys
Yeah.
some befores and afters, just so you can kind of see some of the process. I won't show too much, but at least I can say that this was shown during LA Comic Con. So whatever. All right, I'm gonna share my
All right. Yep.
All right, go for it.
entire screen. Do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep. I can add it to Stitch. There we go.
So you can
There we
you guys can totally see that we shot this entire scene on green screen, and she was totally just like looking, it's like, oh my God, you're there, but you're not really there. And by the way, if you grab the comic book issue number 2, these panels are almost 1-to-1 with the comic book. So you're like, all right, well, what's that supposed to look like? So let's bring it up. Boop, boop, and boop. Oops, let's get rid of that. Let's make sure we have color. Let's get rid of the captions. There you are. And so now you saw that green screen where you originally saw it, and now she's really just looking, and you've got that. But really,
Wow.
everything that you saw prior to was this.
Wow.
It looks great.
Thank you.
Huh.
So, if anything, in so many ways, yes, I am the person that actually reviews it, but not just that. Like, because of my background, I started out as an artist, and then I eventually grew into a lead, supervisor, then director, then executive. Just because I went the executive route doesn't mean I've forgotten everything. So I'm still the one, like, literally managing the work, but also in some cases doing some of the work because I know it like the back of my hand. I started out in that world.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. I mean, as a filmmaker who's kind of starting out too, it's incredibly inspiring. So, just some weirdly specific questions. What is the budget like for something like this? Like, what is
Okay, so
funding like and all of
do you
that?
want the budget because I know what I was doing, or do you want the budget if you asked me to do it?
I'm saying, like, what did the production look like? How professional was it? Is it, what kind of
So it's professional, but it was lean because in
Right.
so many ways, like when you look at a large movie production, there's a lot of fat in theory, right?
Right,
Like
right. That's kind of what I'm saying is what was the
exactly
process?
like if you know where you can cut those corners, you can objectively cut those corners and then
Mhm.
approach it in how you want to. It's the same thing with visual effects post. Like if you say, hey, I have this film, I don't know you, but I need you to do this for me, I'll give you a price based on market value. But if I'm doing it and I know exactly what I want out of it, then that price basically cuts to a fraction of that. I mean, there is a
Exactly.
reason why there are filmmakers like Neil Blomkamp or Gareth Edwards who came from visual effects, who were able to direct big budget tentpole films after their first indie, because regardless of those being indie, they knew everything going in and out of that. They had a much better perspective than somebody who didn't know that process inside and out. So you've got the same sensibility of how they were able to bring the scale of what they were after, but maybe for less than what it would have taken if the person at the helm didn't really or wasn't as familiar with visual effects.
Right. And that's really because I'm saying that it looks so just
Well, also
high budget and all of
when
that
you
too.
make friends,
Right.
when
Well,
you make
yeah, right.
friends,
Obviously,
yeah.
you have
Hey,
connections and all that.
can we shoot this at your studio? And they're like, yeah, sure. We've been friends for 10 years.
Right, exactly. I
So
know it
there's
is
that,
impressive.
right? There's definitely that. And by the way, the lady you saw, the woman, the goddess, she is actually she's Filipino acting royalty. So she is. We made sure that when we casted for the goddess, that she could embody the character. So we were lucky enough that we actually had an actress who was who was pretty iconic in Philippine cinema, be the guest star here, essentially to play the goddess, and that was pretty exciting.
So essentially, you cast a goddess to play a goddess.
Pretty much, yeah, exactly. Actually, this is where acting, or this is where casting actually changes your story. Because originally, when we were casting for Carmina's mother, um, we had a very different actress in mind, and Carmina's mother was supposed to be the human, and it was Carmina's father who was supposed to be the supernatural. But when that actress became unavailable, and instead her agent suggested this other actor, I was like, we're not going to cast her and make her the maid at the trailer or the diner lady. So instead of Carmina's father becoming the supernatural element, we made the mother become the supernatural element. So that's kind of how sometimes the casting choices you make in film changes your actual story.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It really
Yeah.
is. Just, yeah.
Yeah, I had a honor of talking to someone a couple weeks ago and watching his independent film that he did, and he was also an FX creator for like Space Jam and all the Disney sequels and stuff like that. It's amazing that you have the same, kind of the same thing with being, an artist, stuff like that. Really being able to shoot the shots that you want, the scenes, and lay it out, and to be able to add the FX later as well.
I think what you realize is when you're working on those big tentpole projects, it's great for your resume, by the way, right? It's great for your credibility. But what's different there is you have layers and layers of approval processes before any frame even goes out, where your level of creative control is just not the same.
Right.
So after years of that, it becomes more of like, what, I want to do something where I have that level of creative control, or I'm driving the narrative, I'm telling the story. Now that I know how to do this, like, people actually ask me, so why did you get into the industry? And you know what the true answer is? I got into the industry so I could know what to do on my own stuff.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Well, that really was the reason. Like, the fact that I've now got, how many titles do I have? Like 60 plus shows, that doesn't even include how many episodes each of those shows have under my belt. It's like, yeah, I have worked on some of the most iconic projects on television, and I kind of know how they've approached it, so I could approach it on something smaller scale while still bringing that sensibility into something like this. So that's the reason why, yes, it could have been a fraction of the budget of a particular show that you might have watched, but in terms of the technology behind it, it's the same technology, it's the same film quality equipment that was used in post as any big budget stuff.
Yeah.
And it shows even with this, like the small green screen that you showed us right there, like
it looks immense.
Yeah, like the quality of it is very.
And by the way, those are still temps.
Right. Well, I was gonna say, but like the quality that we see on there is, I don't want to go straight to Marvel, like Marvel.
No, but it looks like it was a couple $100 million.
Well, higher level Marvel, because when I say Marvel, there's
okay, so let's go into Marvel. I'm sure you guys have seen the article, so it's not a secret, right? Let's go into Marvel. I think one of the, now I'm not going to say issues because I don't want to make it seem like I'm saying it's issues. One of the things we found out about Marvel, and yes, I have done my share of some Marvel projects, so it's not saying a word, but one of the things that people have said in magazines and in some interviews is that Marvel tends to be indecisive towards the end. So imagine this. You have a project that had a particular effect, and then all of a sudden they changed the story at the last minute, but the theatrical date didn't change.
Right.
What do you think is going to happen? Instead of having 6 months to do a complex scene, now you have a month. What do you think it's going to look like? Don't blame the people in post.
Absolutely not. No,
right.
And that's kind of where I was going to go. Is I didn't want to say anything about like bad about the people who were working post. I was trying to word it around crunch time. Like
exactly crunch time. That's the best term you could say. It's crunch time, right? During crunch time, it's like the work that you do during crunch time is not going to be the same as the work that you're able to produce with proper planning. So,
Right.
That's
for
why
this,
I can never say anything bad about post production in Marvel or anything like that, because a lot
you've seen the
they're
best of them,
rushed.
too.
Like they're being given 1,000 projects and not enough time to do everything. So it's kind of like you're going to get the work that you get because you're being rushed and not given enough proper time to do your best work.
Pretty
Right,
much.
exactly.
I mean, I think that's kind of like why when we won for Gotham, actually. So we won the Emmy for Gotham, which is what these certificates are for. That was a very unexpected win, quite honestly, because we were up against shows that were streaming and shows on networks. Sorry, not networks, shows on streaming and on cable. And the difference was when you work on something like Gotham, because it was airing on network television, you had a much shorter time like working on those episodes, whereas something like Game of Thrones, where you theoretically had months in order to do different things. So it's not a fair comparison, right? So when we were there, I remember like literally doing this. I was like, I'm pretty sure The Crown or The Handmaid's Tale is gonna win. And then somebody goes like, "Get up!" It's like, "What? I'm taking a picture." It's like, "No, they're calling you guys." It was so surreal, because I was like, I totally did not think that was going to happen, to the point where none of us were even prepared mentally to get that. So we were kind of like fumbling our way through. Let's just say when that happens, nobody can ever prepare you for that, because you never think it's going to happen, and then all of a sudden it does, and you're like, "What?"
Right.
Right, you're in shock because as any artist, you're always your worst critic. So you're gonna say, like in your own head, you're like, I could have done better, or it was okay, and then you get an award for it, and it's like, okay, well, apparently it was good. Like
Yeah, right.
I can watch certain shows and still nitpick the stuff that aired already on the stuff that I have.
Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah.
funny
Yeah,
story,
yeah.
I
Exactly what
stopped
you're talking about.
watching most of the stuff I worked on.
Yeah, and I mean, we kind of have a different perspective on this too, because one of our friends, close friends of the show, is a visual effects supervisor. Right?
Wait, what's his name?
Curtis Corona.
On what show?
Well, he did like Stranger Things. He's worked on all kinds of stuff, man. He's been working more movies lately, so he's been doing a lot of close work with Maximum Effort. So he's been doing a lot of stuff with Ryan Reynolds, and that started with the Christmas movie that they did. I forgot the name of it.
The one that we recently aired on Apple TV.
Yeah, Spirited.
Yes.
Yeah, Spirit.
Yeah, Spirit. Yeah.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that one.
he did visual effects on Spirited, and him and Ryan Reynolds like got really close. Yeah, he did Free Guy. He's worked on a lot of stuff. So like Curtis Corona, like he's given us a lot of perspective on like how visual effects work and everything like that. Like we got super excited when we found out that the visual effects departments were starting to unionize. It's like, well, it needs to be done because.
Well, let me rephrase and kind of like break the bubble for you, unfortunately.
Mhm.
When you say unionize, certain groups have unionized.
Right.
Industry has not unionized. That is going to, unfortunately, take a little longer, because I think one of the arguments to visual effects unionization as well is it's a much more global industry compared to, say, the local crews, right? It's a little bit more challenging to unionize a global industry rather than globalize a group that's localized.
Right.
Mhm.
Like the way that we see it is it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think again, like I'm not sure how much Curtis had, but for me, this is my 12th year in the visual effects industry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's been in it for a while too, but like, yeah, it's more so because he kind of said the same thing, he was like, well, that's more of a Disney thing, but he's saying that, but if it's kind of how like unions in regular work, where if Disney's getting it, then that makes it a bargaining chip if another visual effects company wants to unionize.
Right, right.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I want to be optimistic, but if you recall, one of the largest inciting incidences where they tried to unionize was during Life of Pi,
Yeah,
Mm,
and
that.
that's
right.
been a while.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So we'll see. Fingers crossed. I hope it happens, but
Yes, very
we'll
much
see.
so.
Absolutely. All right. So what else do you guys want to know?
All right.
We got serious for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's do something fun here.
So as far as your like working on the comic and like the comics that you guys work on, let's get a little bit into Anton. With Anton, are you the writer creator? Like what roles all do you have within Anton itself?
Sure. I guess for Anton, yes, I am the solo writer creator. For Carmina, I was actually also the writer, whereas Erica functioned as the co-writer, but Erica gets credit as a co-creator because, for one, like I believe in authenticity. When there's a character that I don't believe that I could write and kind of truly embody, I invite somebody in there to make sure that there is a legitimate voice. Like nothing bothers me more to me personally, and I don't fault anybody else for this, but me personally, if I'm going to write something, there has to be an authentic voice in there that
Mhm.
is close enough to the material that they could represent it. To me, with Erica, she is definitely female. She is biracial. She is very much that. To kind of like give you an idea of how Carmina actually began, um, three people from a community group of film creatives actually approached me and say, "Hey, we want you to direct the script." And I read their script, and I was like, "This is Asian Charmed." Like, I don't really know what you want me to do with this. Are you even aware that this is that? And they're like, anyway. But besides the point, what I told them was, okay, let's kind of retool this and let's create characters that are a little bit more grounded, but also have an anchor in reality. So at first I was like, all right, Erica, and this was when Erica and I didn't really know each other. I'm not sure if you guys saw. Phil, you never met Erica, but you've seen her, I'm sure, in some of our commercials and videos. Erica started out as a model, became an actress, so she's an actress and model. So when I first met her, I'm like, oh my god, she's probably going to be really annoying. She's my best friend now, but back in the day when we first met, I'm like, oh my god, she's probably going to be high maintenance, blah blah blah. But no, she's great. But when we met and we were talking about the script, one of the things I asked her was, okay, fine, let's create a character grounded in you. So tell me about you. She's like, well, I'm biracial. My mom's white and my dad's Filipino. And so it's like, all right, let's make your character kind of biracial, but mythologically. And that's really how it began. Next thing you know, we started writing it. Next thing you know, we did a test footage. And by the way, the test footage ended up in the film.
Nice.
It kind of like just progressively grew and grew, and we started doing more and more as we became better friends. We're like, hey, do you want to do the spin-off video just for fun? Like we just did that. And so that to me was, as much as I like working on the big projects and having big teams and having these really big set pieces, the most fun I personally had was when I'd be like, do you want to shoot this tomorrow? Or there's this crazy idea that somebody wrote that I think we should join this contest and shoot this and then kind of like be finished in like 3 weeks. Those are the most fun I personally had because you have so much more stake in the story. Sure, it's not going to look like Ant-Man, but at the same time, it's enjoyable because you're a part of every process. You're able to do more, you're able to tell more, you're freer. You don't have like 20 million voices telling you and nitpicking details about every single thing. So yeah, like that's kind of like how a lot of the stories began.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. I think that seems to be a lot, and that's why I really like indie stuff too. Is because the story, the heart, the passion, the drive, everything's visible in the work.
Right, it's not just another corporate, not to disparage.
Okay,
corporate
so
stuff.
let's go into that. What are your
Yeah.
favorite indie projects? Now I'm going to ask you guys questions.
Oh,
My
all right, here we go.
my favorite indie project, Evil Dead.
Evil Dead. Wait, Evil Dead was considered an indie project?
When it was made, yes. When
Yeah.
the first Evil Dead movie was an indie project.
Yeah, started in
Okay.
1979. Two friends making it, driving an abandoned cabin in the woods. They had to put a lien in their parents' house to make the movie.
Well, see, those are the perfect stories that I can kind of like get to. And by the way, one of the fun things, and when we were actually casting for Carmina, is we kept on coming into these moments of serendipity where we were like, "This is so weird." Like we've had so many moments where we were looking for particular things, and the next thing you know, those things happen. Like where we filmed Carmina, because Carmina takes place in a small shitty town in New Mexico, right? And we were like, where can we find a small shitty town in New Mexico and actually have the entire team drive there? Joe went to this town that we found that I found that was kind of similar. And the next thing you know, he went there and went to this diner. And surely enough, the woman who owns the diner is Filipino. But not only that, she owned all of the buildings in the town square. Oh, and she owned the perfect location for the home base of the character. Like, how
That's
often do we get that? And she had Diwatas, which was what Carmina's mythological characters, all over her store. So that wasn't the only moment. There were a lot of moments where, it was almost like this weird moment where, like, at first we were like, I don't know how we're gonna get this, and the next thing you know, just the right moment kind of like happens.
that
Same thing
that
with the
happens.
comics. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. How about you, SDHU? Wait, what is your full name? Like, that is a very
It's confusing. It's a long story. Just say Shadu or whatever.
Shadu, yeah.
Shadu. So Shadu, what about you, Shadu? What is one of your favorite like indie projects titles? Yeah.
Man, there was this. I'm a big fan of this guy who's Austin McConnell, who's kind of a filmmaker, as well as YouTube stuff and whatnot as well. But there's someone else who did a project that was kind of this take on like early American mythology, not Native American, like Puritan and all of that, called the Sudbury Devil. That was really, really well done. It's kind of horror, but it's also comedy in a way. And so it's that kind of thing. It's not, so it's just kind of.
What's kind of interesting though, like to kind of like move the conversation from what you consider indie versus what you consider mainstream. I would even argue that the way they did Godzilla was kind of closer to indie than it was to Hollywood standard. Because I'm not sure if you guys saw, when I say Godzilla -1. I mean, you saw. I encourage you guys to watch the behind the VFX for Godzilla -1 by the guys over at Corridor Digital, where the director is also the VFX supervisor, and their team was so small and they were so, I guess, running out of time that he actually went in and actually did some of the work himself as well. And we all know that that film at this point has become the most groundbreaking Godzilla film. But if you watch the interview or actually read some of the docs about it, he even laughed when they were like, oh, the budget was 15 million, right? I think his kind of like quote was, yeah, I would have loved if it was 15 million. Whereas if you compare it to like an American Godzilla film, those are like $200 million. As far as production budget. So in that argument, the way that was approached was kind of closer to what you would expect from an indie. But look at what they did with it. I mean, yeah, sure, you could argue again. I think I'm objective enough where I could be like, I can nitpick it for what I'm used to nitpicking based on what we see here. But at the end of the day, you can't argue that audiences responded really well to it.
Yeah, everything I haven't watched it myself, but everything.
You haven't? Okay, that is a crime. You need to go.
It is. It's one of those movies that I haven't been to the movie theaters in a while. I haven't been able to get to the movies, but like that's on my list of movies that I need to watch because I've listened to about 4 or 5 different reviews of it and nobody has anything bad to say about it. Everybody talks about how amazing the human element of the movie is, where the majority of people want to go to a Godzilla movie and see kaiju beating the crap out of each other, and you go see this movie and they make you care about the people.
But see, regardless of that, though, they still do have the kaiju beating the crap out of everybody. But there were very chosen moments.
Yeah, but like I said, with the reviews that I've been seeing have been just, they make you care about the people, which is something that you don't expect in the Godzilla movie. And that makes me want to watch it, is if you can make a compelling story along with the Godzilla movie itself, that puts me into it even more. Because my thing is that I love storytelling. It's not so much about big spectacle. I do enjoy big spectacle. I do enjoy explosions and crazy stuff and whatever, visually appealing things. But what it comes down to for me is always storytelling. It's always how good is the story? How deep can I connect with the characters? I love operatic stories where Star Wars as an example, where you're plopped into the middle of a universe without explanation, and you learn as the characters learn. Like I love those kind of stories, where you're just immersed in the story. Like that's what it is for me. Is I'm a big lover of storytelling over anything.
Speaking of storytelling, actually, and I didn't even realize it when we started conceiving the characters. A lot of this kind of like came about when we started doing the workshops. I'm gonna take us back to new icons. One of the things that I really had to distill in everybody is, yes, you have fantastical characters, you have mythology, you have magic, you have blah 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 blah. But at the end of the day, I need you to tell me what your character's conflict is and how they resolve it in a human way, without the magic, without anything. Like here's kind of like the way that I even quantified it as far as Carmina's concerned. If you remove the magic of Carmina, it literally is about a woman who found a weapon to get out of her abusive relationship. That's how her story began. It's not how her story continues. But every character has kind of like one traumatic moment, right? So that happens to have been her traumatic moment. But if you remove the magic, if you remove the mythology, she could have as easily been a girl who found a gun under the bed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And kind of like use that. Whereas, again, going back into new icons, one of the things that I've encouraged everybody is, don't write this as a mythology story, write it as a human story. And I think people will be surprised about the more human connection, because no matter what race you're from, no matter what mythology you like, there's going to be something in it for everybody and for different age groups and different subgroups, where they're going to be able to relate to the characters just because of their base humanity. And I think that's really what I've been trying to hammer into the new icons creators.
And again, that just makes it that much more compelling to me. This is what I love about indie comics is what we've been interviewing a lot for the last 3-4 months. We switched from trying to get into like more of like the big companies and talking to more indie storytellers, because I've just been compelled by people's ability to tell these stories, and the stories have just been that much more compelling to me, because I feel like people are able to write relatable stories really well, and that's where we've really been into the indie comics more than anything.
Yeah, pretty much. But out of curiosity, you guys, I know you guys are in film and TV and whatnot, and kind of like pop culture. But is any of you working in the industry at all?
No. Oh well,
No.
technically Graveyard is, but
Technically, yes, I am.
What do you do, Graveyard?
I recently, because of the indie comic and horror people that we've had on the show, I've got into the indie found footage horror films.
Okay.
In the Chicago area. So it's been amazing so far. I've met some really awesome people, and just like I said, that's why I'm falling in love with indie all over again, just because seeing the drive, the passion, and being on the film sets and seeing how things are done from their perspective, and being there at 3 a.m. in the middle of a farm with canned fire and coyotes howling all around us just to shoot a scene is astounding to me.
Wait, so what are you doing on set? What did you do on set?
I was a production assistant. I had a small part in it, and it is growing into knowing more people throughout the country. I have 4 feature films on the B, helping production, write as well, and acting.
And whereabouts do you live?
Chicago.
Oh, I was gonna say, if you lived in LA, I was going to invite you to a Television Academy event.
Ooh, Phil, you gotta get me out there.
All right.
we're in Sacramento, so it's like that's the thing that sucks for us is that we're in Sacramento, and it's like, damn, should we just move to LA?
Yeah, you know what? Look, the way I kind of like describe it is, LA, you'll have the industry is here, but it's really not just here. A lot of people have moved to different places, so don't feel that. It's like it's a proximity thing, but once you're kind of like a little bit further along, you could kind of come here when there's a relevant event that you're aware of in advance.
Yeah, I mean that's like we go to LA Comic Con every year, right? And it started off as we lucked out as in getting press badges for the podcast, and it's evolved. Now we have a full relationship with LA Comic Con. We go every year. This year was like an even bigger media presence for us. So it's it's been great. Like as we grow, and that organization like recognizes us and allows us to continue to grow too. So it's pretty fun.
So are most of you guys based in Sacramento for the most part?
James and I, the two main hosts, James being the one that's in the chat right now, we're basically
I'm here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so
Nice.
middle of nowhere. But
We were just in Dallas.
nice.
We were supposed to go to Oklahoma, but then the weather got a little nasty.
Yeah, Oklahoma is incredibly unpredictable, and we just have a wet season and a dry season. We don't really have anything else.
Construction
So.
season.
Well,
Right.
actually, another interesting story. So my partner and I, we do road trips a lot, and Carmina was actually partially born from the road trips as well. In fact, the trailer, or sorry, the trailer house, this exterior image right here, the image that actually inspired this was a dilapidated trailer home somewhere in East or West Dallas.
Ooh.
So again, you're kind of like now seeing how the people that I came across, the different travels. So the way that I actually describe what Carmina is as far as the film itself, it's the film and the comic. It's urban Americana meets Philippine mythology, and you're like, what the fuck? How would that work?
It sounds amazing. So,
But that's really what it is, because it was born from the different travels. I mean, Erica hates it when I say this. So I was like, Erica, you know that Carmina's the goddess of the trailer park, right? She's like, don't say it. No, Erica's very, like, she wants it to be a little bit more elevated, but I'm like, well, you can't argue. That's how we started the story.
right.
like, no, she is the goddess of the trailer park. Don't sugarcoat it.
Pretty much. But the tree here, because like in Philippine mythology, characters often come out of a tree, but this tree is a pecan tree from Dallas.
Nice.
It's
Nice.
not a Philippine tree; it's a pecan tree from Texas.
I asked, is it pecan or pecan down in Texas?
You know what? I've actually never made the distintion. Like
Again,
is it pecan or is it pecan?
there's a right answer.
What is the right answer?
I want to hear you, fellow Midwesterner. What do you think it is? What you do?
Oh, it's pecan.
He's like, who else is a Midwestern?
I was like,
The guy below me here.
Okay, so I did say it right. I mean, look, kind of like not completely growing up here, I pretty much picked up how everybody spoke. So there are moments where I'm like, am I saying it wrong? I probably am saying it wrong, but I don't care anymore.
In the South, it's pecan pie.
Okay,
I hate
but,
that. Look,
It
I,
is,
I
though.
try.
but
I
isn't,
try
but isn't
consciously.
Oklahoma technically the South?
It depends on which part of Oklahoma you're in.
Oh, I didn't realize
typically,
that.
yeah, typically like northeastern Oklahoma is more
Midwest?
Is more Midwest, and the further south and west you go, it gets more and more southern.
I will say
No.
from Chicago, if I go 50 miles south, I'm in the South as far as I'm concerned.
Fair.
I see.
But it's
American
weird
geography
because it's not
is my
geographical.
strong suit.
So, yeah, it's just it's interesting. No, I try consciously not to have a country accent. So,
I mean, I feel like if I stay there for too long, I start saying y'all.
Yes.
I try consciously not to. So,
Yes. Having stayed a couple weeks in South Carolina before as a kid, I definitely got the drawl going at that point in time when I was there for that long.
I mean,
I
I
will
feel
say
like we're
I
all
did
kind
have
of
a bit of an
familiar
accent.
at a certain stage, right?
I'm
I
like,
think so prior to being here, I used to live in Australia. So
Mhm.
Australian English was my first exposure to English. So
Mhm.
I remember in college, in film school, I was finishing up this film, and one of the actresses was Australian, and I totally didn't realize that I was already kind of switching. So imagine this: I addressed the entire cast and crew kind of like in this more neutral thing, and the next thing you know, I was like, "Yeah, and we've got this film, and we've got blah 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 blah." And next thing you know, they were like, "What the fuck is going on here?" Because I totally forgot. Because when I was talking to her, I was kind of like going into that mode, and then I just started addressing everybody that. But then it also happens when I got a little too drunk.
Well, I mean, you kind of see that because Carrie Fisher had that little bit of the English accent in the first Star Wars movie, even though
Wait,
she
did
was
you?
she did she had the because she was training in theater in England, so the enunciation was English taught in over there for the first Star Wars.
Right, and that was also just a character device too. It's like she's trying to sound more sophisticated and all of that too.
Meanwhile, Mark is just like Straya.
What's kind of funny about, I guess, in essence, popular television is how did the British or even the Australian or even the South African become the more nuanced and elevated, whereas the American became the ordinary? When did that happen?
Well, because the English spoke what we speak here in America, and then they purposely changed it to sound more sophisticated and aristocratic.
Wait, is that right?
No, that's
Yes, it
not.
is.
That is not correct. That is
Are you
not.
Sure? Are you sure?
I have a
Are you sure?
some research
Well,
in
how do you
linguistics here.
explain people in Australia, which are closer to the British accent in a way?
Yeah,
Because
that's
they
the
are
British accent.
the British prisoners. Prison
Oh,
speak
okay.
is very different than.
Look, it is not. I guarantee you that is not true.
Straya.
They have always had that sort of enunciation, and then they came to America, and it changed here.
I wonder if it changed
American
because
accent.
of the locals here.
Well, so the American accent is a combination of Italian, Polish, and there's another accent that's like mixed together, and it kind of like started in New York and like made its way across the United States. And then of course in the South was more French, and that's why like the accent became what it was. It's like a melding of different accents that created the American accents. That's right. Say Wong in the chat, it was German.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that makes sense, and in so many ways, people don't realize too that there isn't one American accent. One of my favorite things that I laugh at when my mom messages randomly, she's like, "I have a friend in New Jersey. Do you know them?" I'm like, "No, that's."
You don't know Rob from Jersey? Come on.
But that's like me. Like I was in the army, right? And every time if you tell anybody, hey, I was in the army, hey, my cousin was in the army. Yeah, what
Yeah.
years was he serving, and where was he serving at? Because there's like, like there's a very low chance unless we were in the same unit, and even then, there's still a low chance because battalions are big.
Pretty much. But I mean, I think it surprised me too, though, that in kind of being here, I've met so many people that I'm like, this is so weird. Actually, so going back into some of the funny stories. So Nikki J, Nilo, who is in our new icons, we've been friends for a while. We met because during my college year, I casted a Mexican actress to be a Filipina superhero. Anyway, they were friends, and then we met. We became friends, and we found out like last 2 or 3 weeks ago that our families happen to know each other from a small town in a more remote area of the Philippines.
Wow.
That's
After he's been in New Icon, so I was like, you know what? This means Nikki and Anton's stories have to cross over somehow. But that was like my biggest surprise. And the way that I found out was Nilo and I did a film promo, and I tagged him, and my uncle was like, is he related to this person who's practically the exact same name as him? And he goes like, yeah, that's his grandfather, I guess. I asked him. And then he goes like, oh yeah, his grandfather and I used to be like blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what? It was, yeah,
crazy.
we've had so many of that.
Wow.
Wow. So before, so you kind of talked about film. So before that, did you have any interest in comics? Like, was that
I mean,
part of your
yeah,
childhood
absolutely.
or
I'd
whatever?
say, you know what? I think we all come from a generation where we grew up on a diet of comics, video games, and TV, right?
Mhm.
Like, I don't bear a distinction of difference as to which medium is my favorite because they're all like different favorites that I've had over time. Like, okay, so when I went to college, film school, art school, whatever,
Right.
one of my first questions was, well, do I want to specifically just go to a film to get a film degree? Do I want to
Mhm.
get an animation degree? Do I want to get a gaming degree? Do I want to get a visual effects degree? And so, all right, well, I was like, what's the first job you get after each one? So, first was like, all right, well, I like animation, but I don't just want to do animation. I also want to do live action. So, tick that box off. Like, I like gaming, but considering I want my work to be visible to every generation, I felt at that time that gaming hadn't reached that peak yet where
Mhm.
it was, accessible to every generation. You can argue it's still the same at the moment. And
Mhm.
then finally, I was like, all right, so film or visual effects? Okay, so what do you get as your first job if you get a film degree? And I started seeing, okay, you could be a PA. I'm like, I don't know if I want to be a PA when
Right?
and
Well,
so I
that's
was like,
fair.
well, I'm tech
That's fair.
savvy. So I'm like, visual effects. You get a little bit of gaming, you get a little bit of animation, you get a little bit of live action. You kind of like mishmash
Right.
it. And
And
you're
you're not yay.
Long.
so that was really my reasoning. So to answer your question, did I always like comics? Yeah, like I've always enjoyed the stories in it. I mean, even when I was in Australia, I felt like comics have always been my refuge when I needed to kind of do something different or to kind of like escape. Like when I moved to Australia, I ended up in a rural town. So I can totally relate. This town was it was an acreage. My aunt and uncle lived in a place called Orchard Hills, and that's exactly what it meant. It was Orchard Hills. And so
Mm.
imagine me coming from a big city in the Middle East, because I grew up in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, where everything looks futuristic, and then all of a sudden I'm in the middle of the farm. So imagine this city kid in the middle of the farmlands, and I'm like, what do I do here? And you know what kind of became my thing was I found a store in town that sold vintage comics. So every day I would just go there and kind of like peruse through them. They didn't have any of the new stuff. They had like the old New Mutants. They had, all of the older collections. I mean, the funny thing is, like, if I probably looked through what I had back then, I'm pretty sure some of those were valuable only because they were in a different country where they probably didn't know the value of some of those things. But I remember some of those things. Some of those were like New Mutants from the 60s. So who knows? Like, they could have been valuable. But even again during COVID, during different times, like sure, every now and then I step away and I kind of like maybe haven't been to the comic book store in a little bit. Same thing with video games. There's a moment where I'm like, I know it's been really busy, so I hadn't touched, my Switch or PS5 or whatever. But it's always there, right? It's always there. And those are like I remember when I was conceiving potential titles that I would want to do one or direct. One of the things that I wanted to do was like if there was ever a film that I was going to do an epic cinematic of, I wanted to do a Panzer Dragoon saga in the style.
Ooh.
Nice.
Why hasn't it happened yet?
That needs
You
to
know what I mean? Like that, I would watch that. I would pay money for that. Like if that project ever happens, I'll be like, I dreamed this like ever since I was 16. I will apply until I'm blue in the face. But again, I kind of grew up with that. I mean, speaking of like similarities and stuff, like the Diwata character, the mother character for Carmina, actually, when I was in high school, I was like, I'm gonna do that as a Disney project because I can totally see that working in a Disney project. Well, I ended up doing it, but it wasn't in a Disney project, and it wasn't in the style of Disney. It was kind of more mythology horror.
Right.
So,
And it's probably better for that.
So I feel like the dreams and the inspirations and the things you want have always kind of been there in different parts. And it probably isn't a surprise that my entire visual effects career has practically been mostly Marvel and DC material.
Yeah.
Even if I didn't choose that, I just gravitated to it.
Right.
So you have a kind of a good mix of these things. I know both of these are broad categories. This is more of a fun question: sci-fi or fantasy?
You know what? It depends on the day. It really depends on the day. But you know what? I think more lately, I've really been enjoying fantasy more, but it doesn't mean I can't enjoy sci-fi. Because I mean, okay, so let's go into like animation in particular. Like one of my
Right.
favorite animations, and I think it started off as an indie, was Kipo on Netflix.
Hmm.
Do you recall that? Like, I'm pretty sure it started out as an indie. Kipo started out as an indie, so that was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Kipo 8 and the Age of the Wonder Beast. That was one of my
Mhm.
favorites. But yeah, I mean, I feel like, again, we grew up in this stage where we do not have a particular distinction in what we like. We just like things because we like things. Like,
Mhm.
I'm still upset that there's no sequel to Legend of Dragoon. And right now, Final Fantasy 16 is the closest I felt to Legend of Dragoon.
Right.
So
Yeah.
this is
yeah.
where we get nerding out.
Oh yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Hey, I mean, this is what we're here for. We want to hear all the things you nerd out on, man. That's
Oh, yeah.
really like kind of
All right, so I have a confession. Who did you guys all finish Legend of Zelda? The second
Yeah.
one, Tears of the Kingdom.
Yes.
I've watched parts. I don't have a Switch, and that's also something that
I don't either.
Yes.
So,
So this is the terrible thing about me, which is kind of like, I guess all of you can probably relate to at different points. I never played Zelda until Breath of the Wild. So,
I wasn't interested in it until Breath of the Wild. So yeah, no.
I picked up Breath of the Wild. I don't know if I immediately liked it, and then 3 months later, after getting the Switch, I get into it, and the next thing you know, I couldn't put it down, and I finished it. But then Tears of the Kingdom, I get when it was extremely busy. I started it. I'm still 25% of the way. So, yeah, but then right now I'm probably 50%. No, more like a little under 50% in Final Fantasy 16. So I think the fact that we no longer have the same amount of time that we used to when we were 12 probably has something to do with it. But I certainly still have my favorites. Like,
Yeah.
okay, favorite fighting game. Go.
My favorite fighting game, like arcade fighting game.
Any category.
I mean, Marvel versus Capcom 2.
SDHU.
I'm not into fighting games.
No. Young Phil.
That's tricky. I've always been a Street Fighter guy. I got into Tekken for a little bit. I mean, I played Street Fighter 6 because the story we played the storyline on stream, on our Twitch channel. But like I said, I've always been a Street Fighter guy because of like the speed and the way you can counter in that game. More of like an alpha guy. But then I've also always loved Mortal Kombat just for kind of the
story. Like, I think
I'm an old school Virtual Fighter guy though. I used to love Virtual
Ooh.
Fighter. That got me into Tekken like kind of hard for a while.
you know what? It's kind of funny that you say that, because for me, like, clearly from a story perspective, I loved how rich the Mortal Kombat mythologies have gotten over the last 2 to 3 iterations.
Yeah.
The fighting mechanics I enjoy, but I think I really more enjoyed the story mode.
Yeah.
But as far as fighting mechanics, my favorite fighting mechanics is probably not the most popular. It's Dead or Alive. Like, I very much enjoyed the fighting mechanics of Dead or Alive. Like,
But it's not a bad game. Dead or Alive is not a bad game.
I mean, I tried Tekken 8, the demo, and I'm like, I'm still kind of, it's not as fluid as what I kind of like really like about Dead or Alive.
I mean, so I love Marvel versus Capcom because you got to see Capcom people facing against Marvel. I did it just for the most unlikely pairing of fighters.
Wait, what was the last version of that? Was it 3? It was 3.
Yeah, 3 came out a couple years ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah, but I'm an old school Dreamcast gamer, so.
Oh my god, like, so yeah, no. I remember distinctly basically pooling, and actually convincing my brother and sister to pool all of our allowance just so we could get a Dreamcast.
I love it. I love it.
Oh yeah. yeah, like I said, I'm a retro gamer. Anyone that knows me knows I literally have every system ever created just to the left of me.
As far as the Dreamcast, what was your absolute not popular favorite?
Not popular favorite.
Like it wasn't like the traditional favorite for the console. It wasn't
Not,
like Sonic Adventure. It wasn't like Soul Calibur.
Nightmare Creatures 2.
Nightmare Creatures 2. Okay.
So it is essentially, imagine the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but the mythos of all the classic European monsters, and then fighting through it to Rob Zombie playing. It's
fair.
So it's kind of like Final Fight meets Dracula.
Wait, was Phantom Dust the Dreamcast? I don't remember anymore.
I don't know. I don't
Okay,
recall
now
off the top of my head. If you want to get someone who loves fighting games in our chat, say Wong, he has the special, like $300 arcade fighting stick just for his games to play fighting games.
When I got into Street Fighter for a little bit, because I really got into like tournament games.
Mm-hmm.
I got into to rolling around with the stick too.
So a good friend of mine, like actually you met Joe, right? One of Joe's friends, her son actually belongs to I guess one of the top Halo gamers where they get paid a shit ton of money every time they win Halo. So that's his life. That's his living.
That's bad.
Because they make bank from the tournaments.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nightmare Creatures are shit.
Was the shit. Was the shit. He didn't say was shit. Was the shit.
I
Oh, the shit. I'm trying to remember, like, what was my favorite?
Oh, there's so
oh my
many...
god, Skies of Arcadia. I mean,
yes,
I think it was still very much a popular one, but I was kind of upset that the sequel was kind of not the best.
I mean, also Jet Set for Dreamcast.
Yeah, Jet Set was Universal.
That Radio Future. They're supposedly they're coming out with a new one.
Yes, they are.
Wait, did you guys play Space Channel 5 though? That was hilarious.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I have the capability of playing any video game over the past 50 years. So I have.
Wait, how about Sword of the Berserk? That was a good one. That was actually one of the ones which I think didn't get as much press, but that was one of my favorites.
Oh yeah. As Phil said, Sega is coming back out with their like reimagining of their classic games. So Jet Set's coming back. Golden Axe is coming back.
Oh god, they're doing Golden Axe again?
The last one was on the PS3, and that was the Rider one.
What was Golden Axe? I don't think I remember that one.
Golden Axe is where you're a human, muscle-bound human that turns into like a wolf as you fight a side-scroller, beat him up.
I totally missed that one. Oh, you know what? There was one more thing that I actually really enjoyed that I'm kind of upset there's nothing similar to it right now, and it's Echo the Dolphin.
Oh, they came out with a new Echo, man. Like Echo was a good game.
Echo's getting reimagined too.
Okay.
Yeah. It's astounding. But to your talking, you talked about that you would love to do a Panzer Dragoon. My dream project would be a Zombies Ate My Neighbors movie.
Zombies Ate My Neighbors. I mean, so question for you, like, okay, if that was your dream project, what would your role be in that dream project?
Director of horror.
Director. Okay. Great. So you're kind of like more of the quirky guy.
I have crazy thoughts in my head about horror movies, and I've seen way too many. And I also really love bad movies. So Zombies and Neighbors is right up my alley because it is pseudo horror. It has all the B and C movie monsters in it.
So I'm always going to ask this of everybody: what are you doing to get to that dream project?
I'm working on writing scripts and making feature films and working on a pilot TV show to help get myself more into the field.
Nice. And how long have you been at it?
6 months.
You know what? You got to start somewhere. So great.
Well, I mean, I used to do all that stuff when YouTube was literally just starting. So I used to do all the videos and skits and all that stuff a long time ago because I'm old. So.
Well, best of luck, and obviously, between myself and your other friend, obviously, if you have any questions,
Yeah.
if there's anything about people in the industry, questions are always welcome.
Oh, awesome.
Beautiful.
I know Phil has some burning hot questions for you, don't you, Phil?
The burning hot questions we have. So let's get towards the end of this, and I actually haven't come up with with our hypothetical fight. So if you want to something,
I got it. Don't
we've already
worry.
got one. All right, so
I
we'll get.
got it. Yeah.
So
Hypothetical character fights.
yeah, so we've got some hard hitting questions. These are the hardest questions you're ever going to be asked. Are you ready for this?
Sure, I'm ready for it.
All right.
By the way, I did get in trouble in high school because I thought the Megazord was the best, and my friend was like Sub-Zero, and we basically got in a fight and went to the principal's office.
There you go.
All right, go. I'm ready.
Bro, you are the shit. Okay. So what is your favorite kind of taco?
What? My favorite kind of taco?
What is your favorite kind of taco?
Can I say? You know what? Okay,
You can say whatever you want.
I am terrible at this, but what is the one where it's actually kind of fried? Oh my god, what is it?
Like deep fried?
Yeah, it's kind of like it's kind of like I'm not sure if it's a deep fried taco. I know it's fried because it's definitely crunchy and it's like packed in. Jesus Christ, I don't even know what my favorite taco is. All I know is I get it from the tacos.
Birria?
What? Birria, yes.
Quesadilla? Some quesadilla. Yeah, yeah. I mean, quesadilla is delicious.
All right, there. Well, that was embarrassing.
Okay. It's all right. It's okay. It happens.
Again, hard-hitting question.
Hard hitting questions. Like I said, it is the hardest question you're going to be asked. All right. What? So what's some advice you might have for anyone trying to get into the industry?
Which part?
Both of them.
All right.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
just like if you have one for the film industry, one for the comic industry.
Okay, so for the film industry, let's begin with that. I'd say for the film industry, know what you want to do in particular, because here's the thing. If you go to me and say, hey, I really want to do something, but then everything that you say and do is kind of the opposite of that, it's not going to work. Like, you have to kind of like focus to one thing that you're good at, that you could be good at, and then expand from there and then branch out afterwards. Like, you can't be like, I want to know everything. Like, there is no such thing as everything, unfortunately. Keep doing your indie projects because those allow you to grow independently, and that can allow you to stay creative on your own terms. But in terms of becoming a part of the industry, you do have to pick where you want to be a part of, whether you want to do visual effects, you want to do audio, you want to do editing. You do have to choose just so you get your foot in the door, unless you kind of just want to go in as a PA.
Right.
You have to hone in on what you think a company or a production will want your value in, and then grow from there. I mean, when you take a look at people that have ended up becoming directors, not everyone came from the standard traditional directing pathway. Some of them came from different parts of the industry that just found themselves eventually in the director seat because they found the right opportunity after building those contacts. I think more than anything, find what you think you can stand and stomach and enjoy for an obscene long amounts of time while you're literally sitting there, and determine what that is. If that's editing, then great. Get really, really good at editing, apply to editing jobs, and get yourself placed in a studio or an organization that could allow you to progress in your career. I hope that helps. As far as
it's great. It's great advice.
yes, for comics, indie comics is a very different beast from the more traditional Marvel and DC. So I can only advise on the indie stuff. The thing that I could say about indie comics is, well, for one, find your authentic voice. And I know that is such an obscure thing to say, but quite frankly, it is the truth, because one of the things I realized about indie comics is there's so many people making indie comics. All you need to do is go to a convention. You see so much, but the second part of it is find that authentic voice. Actually, allow yourself to believe in it, and find an audience that will want to follow you and you could relate to. Be your own proponent. Um, Also, apart from that, have an understanding of what part of the process you could be really good at, whether that's in art direction, whether that's as a writer, and then find friends or find collaborators that could bring that vision to life, right? Like, I'm not gonna lie, it ain't cheap. Um, but if you find good collaborators that can kind of like work with you through it, I think you're better for success, or you have a better chance for success. Like, I think for me, um, if I did it on my own, it could still have been possible, but the friends I made along the way became the constant source of not just inspiration, but also constant source of motivation. Because every now and then I'd be like, I just spent 12 hours on a film TV project. I really don't want to do any of this. But then somebody goes like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I really want to do more of this. And in Erica's case, she's like, oh, what do you think? Let's do this. She's always encouraging and coming up with ideas, even though she may not have been the creative or technical force. She was the motivating force in getting all of it. And then she kind of like adds value, like create a team around you that add value and have something that they can bring that you can add to, and have a group that kind of like believes in the same thing that you do. So it's not necessarily a how do you get in, but how do you get started? And staying in is going to be a matter of like how often you can engage your audience, how much product you can build. And unfortunately, both unfortunately and fortunately, the way that we can reach audiences today is a lot more accessible than they've ever been. So if one of those people happen to be a little bit more savvy on the social part, I know we sometimes hate that part, that you'd probably be better for it. Like, I know one of my biggest Achilles heels is I'm a control freak. Like, I literally absorb everything until I explode outwards. So I'm learning to let go of responsibilities. Whereas some people are like, oh, here, do everything for me. And then they're really not doing anything, which is kind of like the equal part of that counterproductivity. So find a good balance.
Nice.
How's that?
I like it.
It's great.
It's good advice. So Graveyard, this is on you. Normally I'm the one that comes up with this, but like who would win in a fight?
Carmina, a demigod versus another demigod, Xena, warrior prince.
Ooh.
Which Carmina?
Demigod.
Carmina versus Xena, warrior princess.
Wait, are you asking me, or are you
asking you? Who would win in the fight?
Okay, so all right, let's go into, how about this? Instead of me deciding the fight, I'll tell you what Carmina's abilities are, because you guys don't even know what Carmina's abilities are. Right?
Yeah.
So,
All right.
Carmina has her major ability happens to be, so she's a Diwata. They're extra dimensional abilities. So she has power siphoning, which is kind of like how she found out that she had ability. But instead of just being able to siphon power, she actually siphons any type of energy. So that's kind of like what she does. But apart from that, she has, the usual levitation, and she has like telekinetic tendrils. But there you go. So that's what she does.
Okay. So,
Awesome.
with Xena being a god killer, could she defeat Carmina?
I mean, I guess it depends, because one of the arcs for Carmina is that she, instead of a character that kind of like grows more powerful over time, like one of the proposed arcs we have for her is she goes mad because she basically absorbs way too much power way too quickly. So she actually gets kind of punished because of that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on how far she's gotten in her abilities. Like, maybe perhaps if she was still very new and Xena did it from a far distance, she probably could. But if she had gotten to the version of Carmina where she probably got to the point of altering reality portion, probably not. So it depends on which version. I feel like you could always argue that with every character. Same as Jean Grey, right? If you found Jean Grey pre-Phoenix, you could probably take her on. But if you found her post-Phoenix,
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it doesn't help that Xena has the warrior's cry before she starts throwing stuff at you. So it's a dead giveaway that she's coming for you.
I mean, but, okay, you have to realize though, I'm not kind of trying to trash her character, but Carmina does start out as a very dreary character. Like that's actually one of our biggest complaints when we created her, because it's not like we created her and decided, oh, we're gonna do a universe around her. We literally just created her because I don't know, we were talking about it and she became a character, and next thing you know, we were shooting, and next thing you know, she's a comic book. But we actually joke.
Character? Like, it was one of those things where it's like, wouldn't this be a cool character?
I mean, not really. We didn't even have that in mind. We were just like, yeah, let's create the story and this and that. Like we didn't even think about, about what would be a good character to open up a universe. I'm like, if you told me, yeah, you're gonna create a comic book company and your first character is a murdering demigod, I'm like, I'm not sure if that's really how I would have chosen to open a universe where half of or most of the population tends to be a little conservative. So, but that's kind of what happened. So, yeah, I mean, Carmina's kind of dreary. So I think, again, in New Icons, people will see her for the first time where she's not just being a killjoy. I would argue that she would be very easy to kill in her inception. But in her Wrathborn Goddess form, which is kind of like what you saw in the New Icons poster, she would be very challenging to kill at that point.
There you go.
Like, okay, let's talk about character inspirations. That probably explains a lot. When we were creating her, I'd say our character inspirations are in sequential order: Carrie, the Phoenix, and Scarlet Witch. And
I see.
So yeah, she kind of begins like Carrie and then ends up more like the Phoenix.
Very
Or
cool.
Scarlet Witch, depending
Very
on
cool.
which version of crazy you're going for. But yes, she does kind of lose it. And that is kind of the character's initial arc.
All right.
God, I love this. So what's next for you? Do you have any shows coming up or anything like that, or
So what's next?
anything that's not under NDA?
You know what? Not really, because everything is under NDA. But you know what? I'd say, if anything, people can look forward to not just the Carmina live action, but also New Icons, which again, even I'm geeking out whenever we develop new parts, because every time we see the new drafts of, like, I'm sure you guys know, when you're doing your comics, you begin with your initial drafts, and with every initial draft we're already like kind of like geeking out about their own material. And I'm sure you guys know that feeling is kind of indescribable every time, like, because as somebody who's geeky myself, to be able to geek out on your own material is double the satisfaction.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like, like, to me, I would never create anything if I would never buy it.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
that's kind of like how I quantify it. Like, Carmina is exactly what she is because it's what I like. Like, I don't understand when people create material that they don't even like.
Yeah.
Right? I have to like it. Like, I have to want to pick it up myself if I was the audience. Like, I think my metric for self, in terms of like, what do I want to make sure of when I create something, I want to make sure that I would want to see it, that I would want to buy it. And that's kind of like just me as as a geek, as somebody that grew up on this material. I want the types of materials that I myself would like.
Yeah, and I mean that's most of the comic book creators we talk to is they like, when if we ever ask them the most basic question of what made you want to write the character? Well, I wanted to write something that I wanted to read.
Pretty much, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So, where can everybody find you if they want to follow you, find out more about Diwata, if they want to find out more about you? Where can everybody find you? What's all your social medias?
So my social media is on screen. So I am at MarkFX411, and Diwata Comics is at DIWATAKOMIKS. Last but not least, a little a little nugget of information. So why comics with a Komiks? So for a lot of people that don't know, when the United States colonized the Philippines for a short period of time, they left such a mark in the country that the entire country created a subculture of comics that grew over there. Like if you take a look at the history of Southeast Asia, Filipino comics was one of the first in the region that kind of like became a thing, unlike anime actually. So when you Google comics with a Komiks, you are going to see pretty much an entire new world of comics that could be very similar to manga because manga is Japanese comics, right?
Right.
Comics spelled that way is Filipino comics. So that allows us to bring visibility to this kind of subgenre as well. And you're going to see a lot of other titles that you probably have never heard of or even seen.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Loving this.
All right.
So
we
that's why-
didn't.
Oh, sorry, but
No worries. I was gonna say we didn't really get into the bracket this week, guys. Sorry, the conversation just kind of went where it went, and we had too much fun.
Yep.
And decided
Definitely.
not to stop it. So, but we will continue the bracket next week. Oh man, again, we just had way too much fun. This is a good conversation.
Well,
Definitely.
yeah, super. I totally had fun, you guys. I mean, I didn't even realize it's 8:30. And by the way, speaking of 8:30, I do have to see Lynn because we are about to go over her reference materials. So watch out for that. Make sure you're following us because the stories are super dope, and I think everybody will have something to relate to at some point.
Sweet.
So let's let me
Get your camera situated there.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
All right. So at some point through this, when I was putting the one of the flaps on the ATAT on the AT-AT, I snapped something and like half of the body flew away.
Oh,
I spent like time looking for the pieces, and I got everything put back together, but I think some of these pieces are like somewhere, so I'm gonna have to search for everything. But just so everybody sees what we got done so far, so we've got more of the body on this, right? The neck is on the front right here, right? So the head isn't obviously on here, but then like you got more of the body. There's a port on the back that basically is supposed to be like an exit thing, so jump out through the back, right? And then of course starting to put some of the flaps on the front. We've got the beginnings of the door on the sides, and that way if that pops open, then troops will jump out. So we're getting in there on the AT-AT. It's starting to take more shape, but it's really just the body so far.
nice.
Uh,
All right.
it is time to end the show. It's time for the dance party. So guys, I hope everybody had fun. For those of you who are going back to watch and watching this later on, hope you stayed all the way to the end because it's been a great conversation the entire
It
time.
really has.
Yeah. So, Mark, you are welcome to come back on the show anytime you want. If you guys are promoting anything, you want to come on the show.
You know what? I want to come back with the entire team, and I think that'll be a lot.
Hell yeah, that would be awesome, man.
I don't know if we can do all 7 people, but maybe I can have them all here, and it'd be a party room.
Oh, and don't forget, young Phil Fours would like to come on for a quick announcement too.
Oh, is it like right now?
Mhm.
Oh yeah. Well, send him the link. Get him in here right now because we're closing the show down.
Yeah. I'm messaging him right now. So awesome. Where can we find you should do?
Oh yeah. So
all the things you do.
all right, all the things I should do. I am SHDU Studios here on YouTube and on Instagram. I do short films, music, and other nerdy stuff. I am also on Frey's channel. We have a little series called Classify, where we take your favorite pop culture characters and place them into their respective D&D classes. You also have a companion series called Journals Classes, where we go through each of the D&D classes and their subclasses. We will have a new episode of Journals Classes coming out tomorrow, and it will be on Paladin. I am also in the distance learning sphere, as you can see. I'm on the download on Tuesdays and build on Thursdays. There, show you are watching right now. And I'm on Private Game Productions for the Saturday morning node out. And now for the new order.
Yes.
All right. Graveyard. Where can everybody find you?
Yes. You can find me everywhere and social media at Pod Out at Night. Make sure to check out the new venture I am doing with some of awesome horror people at Horror-Raven. Yes, spelled incorrectly on purpose on all social media as well. And I am also the co-host of the Mostly Pod Out at Night, Mostly podcast. New episodes up every Wednesday, part of Comic-Con Radio. And make sure to check out our new show, Conversations in the Void, where just last night we spoke to Jeffrey Wiseman, who replaced Crispin Glover in part of Back to the Future Part 2 and 3. So make sure to check out that interview from last night at Pod Out Night YouTube channel. You can find me here at Kyber Cave Productions 2 to 3 days a week. You can see me harassing Phil every Monday while he's gaming. And you can see me here on the build every Thursday and just a warning, I will be taking off the next couple of weeks just to focus and reprioritize the horror stuff I'm doing, get my office put back into order. So we will go from there.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Night, mostly.
All right. And just to answer in the chat, Fitness Chick 4 asking which one of us is the military veteran. That would be me. I'm the Army vet here, so appreciate the thank you for your service here. Fours all of a sudden in the room. Woo, buddy.
What's going on, my peeps? Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Very cool. All right, nice.
I think you're going to stay on after it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, he's here for the dance party. He came just for the dance party. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is it from us. Remember, you again see me on Monday mornings. We will be here on Monday doing games. We finished Cyberpunk 2077 this last Monday, so we're going to be finishing up on Assassin's Creed Mirage, Last Creed, and probably finishing up on the Call of Duty storyline. And then from there, I think I'm going to get into the Shadow of Mordor games.
Nice.
Play with the Nemesis engine. So tune in on Mondays from 8 to 12 for the game streams, and of course Tuesday the download, all the news, the rumors, everything in the pop culture sphere. We're talking about that stuff, and then of course Thursdays show you're watching right now, the download, all the fun interviews, and me
You
build.
mean the build, right?
Sorry, yeah, the build. What I meant. It's been a long day. All right, ladies and gentlemen.
You're good.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Yes,
you.
it was amazing meeting you. You're amazing.
Absolutely. Let's get to this dance party.
Do it.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, the force is already here. Look.
Yeah.
Distance nerding.
Yes.
We'll see everybody next week. Woo!